Hello, the news is strict beyond today with Kiril Goranov. We will explore the principles behind the moon and how the moon influences us according to astrology and human design.
We are here with Kilogram, who is an expert in strict enforcement, Ivanov, who is an expert in human design. Now, from an astrological point of view, the moon is one of the most important bodies in astrology. In Indian astrology, the moon is given much more weight than the sun. The sun is more considered in Western astrology, where the factor of which zodiac sign you are comes into play. It is determined by or against the backdrop of which constellation it stands. In fact, the moon in Vedic astrology is considered in the so-called nakshatras, and actually each lunar day is observed there. If in Western astrology we have moons, in Indian astrology there are nakshatras, and they do not divide into 12 but into 27 nakshatras. What is more crucial is to emphasize what the moon represents. The moon is connected to our soul with our experiences from past reincarnations, and it carries information from these past lives that needs to be processed. This is where the word karma comes from, meaning the work that needs to be done, as translated from Indian medical texts. In fact, the moon is also connected to a person's emotions, an energy related to movement. This emotion is energy in motion. And indeed, the moon is a factor that to some extent influences us on an unconscious, subconscious level. Yes, it is connected to the mother, to feminine energy, and governs the archetype of Cancer, which is extremely important. Why? When a person is they are not in the right expression of their emotions, they can fall into all kinds of emotional fluctuations, slumps, and so on. And that's why it's very important for a person to control their emotions and have self-control. This self-control is largely related to understanding emotions, or what is called emotional growth. Emotional intelligence has been a much discussed topic in recent years and is extremely important. And emotional intelligence, how do we react if the sun is a related state? What do we express? Because the principle of the sun is connected with, from the inside out, what will we express? The moon is how we perceive sacrilege. It is connected with perceptions based on which we accumulate impressions. So the moon is extremely important for everyday matters, right? It's no coincidence that in the Vedas, it's very important which lunar day you were born on, literally what charge your soul carries, what archetype it knows, where it feels a comfort zone and where it doesn't feel a comfort zone.
In fact, without the moon, there would be no life on Earth. It is very important because it holds gravity, it holds our ability to stand upright, and so on, considering that a percentage of the Earth is water and the moon controls the tides. 70% of our body is also water, meaning the moon is super important. In human design, the moon is built, right? The sun symbolizes a person's mission, but a person's mission is a potential in movies together. A person's thoughts are considered through the so-called incarnation cross. But actually, this is potential. In fact, it needs to be developed. It needs to be utilized. According to human design, only 4% of people, and the stimulus fills us to fulfill the mission in this life. That is right. The sun is actually your goal. I have come across a very nice analogy related to what the sun and the moon represent. The sun is your mission. That is the path you are on, let's say, to get from Bulgaria to Chicago, right? That is your mission. The moon is actually how you experience the world around you during the journey, what you feel. That is, the moon is how you experience the world around you, especially how you experienced your childhood. The way we perceive, perceptions are a part of your life, childhood, birth, the relationship with the mother, the relationship with the family, and especially what you need emotionally, which is in emotional needs, or the so-called inner child. To feel secure is also related to security. Very often in astrology, it is connected with needs, like what I need to feel secure, to feel stable in a given area. But in fact, for a person to be truly satisfied and happy, they must integrate both the moon and the sun simultaneously. The moon is actually like food with highs and lows. You couldn't eat for a few days, right? You can't live without the moon either.
With the nutritional percentages,
With the digestive system, still, I have noticed that for people themselves to have particularly happy relationships, it is extremely important in their partnerships. The moon day should be satisfied. That is, if a person has an earthly element, it is also very important in the partnership to have security, whether it will be material, to have security.
yes, in the earthly archetype, with the moon in Taurus, moon in Virgo, moon in Capricorn, material security is indeed very important, as well as the physical presence of the partner, if you will, which, for example, is not as crucial for air moons like those found in Libra, where it is much more important. In fact, communication between partners is more significant. That is, if a person has a moon in Gemini, moon in Aquarius, moon in Libra, their social communication between people is more important. A person needs to connect with the other person.
On a mental level, on a communicative level, there is a mutual form of sharing, a form of sharing ideas. If a person has a fiery moon, like in Aries or Sagittarius, then freedom and creativity become important. In terms of experience and living through it, a person seeks more there. I would even say drama, as they actually need a healthy form of it, especially
the moon in this drama, right? But I would say drama in the more negative sense is when there's a low expression, the need for attention, because the moon needs it, and Leo is associated with the need for attention. Leo Sagittarius needs what? It needs to experience, to travel, to journey, to live through, to get acquainted with new things, with a new worldview, right?
very often people with a strong Sagittarius in their chart and with the moon in Sagittarius, right, may choose a partner who is of a different race. Compared to them from a different ethnicity, they are looking for something that is different from themselves. They want to expand their worldview and horizon. Let's say, for the water signs. A smart person has a water moon. Their attachment is very important. That is, the emotional connection with the other person, the emotional merging, to be able to merge with the other person on an emotional level, not on a mental level. For example, an air sign, why would be okay if they can talk with their partner for 5 to 10 hours a day and share ideas. The water moon doesn't need that. They can be silent, but the water moon needs to feel the other person, to feel that there is a need for security.
Scorpio, yes, but there it's emotional, because with the lunar Leo Scorpio, which is considered one of the worst positions, I say worst in quotes because in my opinion there is no bad position of a planet, just difficult positions that require a bit more work from a person to truly start manifesting their higher expression. But in our case, Scorpio is considered one of the heaviest moons. Honestly, these are the people who really need security, but to such an extreme, truly, so they can relax in the hands of the person next to them in such a way that they even ensure they depend on the person. If it reaches that type of intimacy,
this already provides that security to this moon. But this does not mean there is something bad with the moon in Scorpio. On the contrary, I would say there we have quite a bit of critical thinking, which is very useful. In fact, people often overlook the moon when entering relationships. They most often enter the relationship according to it. According to Mars, that is, during the flirting phase. But when people start to be in long-term intimate relationships, then the moon comes to the forefront. This is about what emotional needs you have from the other on a daily basis. A person is not just about flirting, actually, and for the relationship to be long-term. The two partners need to have compatible moons, primarily emotional compatibility.
in Astrology and human design, it plays a very indirect role in how two people understand each other on a daily basis. You know, there are people who generally love to compete. This is very typical, for example, among fire signs, especially when caught in Leo.
Control, but this is not a bad thing. On the contrary, I would say it acts as a bit like fuel for the relationship, allowing expression. In fact, what is shown in the structure of tachyons is that there is no good or bad chart. Everything is a matter of compatibility. To have healthy relationships, one must be a compatible partner. This is actually the difference, that one is not here to change themselves according to someone else. You are inherently created in certain ways. The question is to find a person who matches your conditions, who is compatible with your needs. Like the example with the fiery moon, if you find someone whose needs are compatible with yours, there won't be any conflict.
Well, the conflict might arise from other parameters within the natal chart, but realistically speaking, the moon is one of the main indicators for a shared life. I can't say that it necessarily dictates marital compatibility from the moon. It doesn't relate to such types of contracts. It's more important on an emotional level. Another thing that is very important, in my opinion, should not be overlooked as a topic. This is what the moon shows. In what way does a person express their emotion? And this can save certain people a lot, right? If you've probably noticed that there are people who are more quick-tempered, who ignite faster, meaning there's a more vivid expression of emotions. This is typical for moons in fire signs or in fire houses. But the idea is that there's no way a person who is emotionally expressive to be completely emotionally compatible with a person who is emotionally defensive and closed off. Nah, this will inevitably create, how should I say, a great need for balancing between the two, which can truly lead to growth for both. But both partners need to want to do it. This, meaning a relationship, is made by two people. Emotionality is how we perceive the world, including our partners.
And actually, one relationship that is essential is between a child and a mother. And in fact, the moon is related to how we see our mother. By the way, it's about how we perceive her, not exactly what she is. The moon describes how we have actually perceived the relationship with the mother. And this is something interesting in human design. Actually, the mother is viewed from the position of the earth, the prenatal earth, meaning human design. As I mentioned in previous broadcasts, works with two natal charts. We have one standard natal chart, the moment of birth. The entire chart from the astrologer is the same, and we have a second one, which is 3 months before birth, called prenatal. So in human design, we have two birthdays. I don't know why we have two moons. It's about natal and prenatal, birth and pre-birth and so on. In fact, in the same way, we have natal earth and prenatal earth. The earth actually truly describes what the mother is, because the earth is what the earth is. The earth is the point opposite our sun, and by person and Aries, the sun is born in Aries. Through it, if a person is a Taurus, they can point to Taurus and Scorpio.
Scorpio, Earth. Yes, that is the Earth, the opposite point. Actually, that is the true mother. The moon actually describes our perception of her, how we have perceived her, what the experience with her was like. Yes, actually, the moon as a theme, there are many people who follow the lunar phases, full moon, new moon. Yes, these are cycles, and it is normal for them to have a relation to certain events because the moon governs.
In a given house in the natal chart of every person, it governs different houses entirely. It is the fastest body, and it is the factor that, how should I say, it. The personal factor, there is something else interesting from ancient times. Tribes used to call our earth, the mother earth, rings. They called the moon the mother of the earth. To be here on Mother Earth and Father Sun, meaning this duality in human design is seen between the father and the mother. The moon is actually perception. We can talk about how people express emotions with their moon, as we say about fiery moons. A person with a fiery moon in Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius tends to be more impulsive in expressing their emotions, especially with those close to them. That is, emotions are not easily restrained there, they are immediately expressed, they flare up quickly, but they also forget quickly. In other words, they are not very resentful.
Yes, emotions pass quickly, but you said something very nice about the family, because the moon is connected with the archetype of Cancer, which is also related to the family. That's why the moon is usually seen by people who are much closer to us, emotionally close people with whom we have stable emotional relationships, and people we met 3 or 4 days ago.
And it works. But this is very good. I like this comparison with the other water moons. Let's say, for example, moon in Cancer, moon in Scorpio, moon in Pisces. These can be the most emotionally vulnerable ones.
You actually gave the easiest ones to be affected because there the topic of security is very important. In fact, with the emotional moons, the water emotional moons, I would say that is one of the most key things for a person to feel secure in a relationship. And when someone takes things too personally, it actually indicates that it's not a high manifestation of a water moon, okay? To take things very, very personally when someone offends you. There's a very important rule, right? Which everyone has come to the conclusion that an insult becomes an insult when a person perceives it as such. Perceptions say that when someone insults you, it's also like giving you a gift and you don't have to accept it equally. Acceptance is not necessary. Acceptance is related to the car, because if you look at the body itself, the moon doesn't emit light, it reflects. It takes the light from the sun and then reflects it. It is a luminary, but in reality, it doesn't emit light. It is a reflective body.
Emotionally, those with water elements are also predisposed to the strongest emotional dependency on their partner. In other words, they are warned about the danger of clinging to their partner or losing their identity or result in the relationship. Therefore, it is actually good for them to balance with a sense of self-sufficiency, while those with earth elements like the moon in Taurus, moon in Capricorn, or moon in Virgo have a tendency to be the most emotionally reserved. In other words, they have the greatest emotional barriers and inhibitions. Earth signs are also quite sensitive, but you won't realize that you've affected these people in some way because they have the biggest barriers and difficulties in opening up emotionally.
Another such challenging position is the moon in Capricorn, where emotional stoicism is very typical. It is a very, very typical example of this type, right? As a combination, the moon in Capricorn is also similar to the moon in Taurus. By the way, there is a strong connection to family. It is considered one of the best positions because it allows emotions to be expressed slowly and smoothly. There isn't the variability in emotions that you might find, for example, with the fiery or the air. An Earth moon in Taurus is considered to have such a position. We could make a video about this. If you're interested, write about the dignities in astrology and what they actually represent. From this perspective, the moon in Taurus is very nice, but also very static. Once it gets stuck on a certain emotion, it can hold on to that emotion for years and not let go. It can also be, we discovered a rather significant problem, meaning a difficulty in detaching from the family. In fact, or a very strong responsibility towards the family, those with the moon tend to take on their parents' responsibilities from a young age. At 7, they had to accept, especially overcoming Capricorn, yoke, and Virgo. What I've noticed is the need for perfection. So that a person truly feels stable in certain things, they need what is called a repetition, cyclicity, or routine. The closest way I can put it is routine. So, she needs certain things to happen at a specific time. That's when the moon feels the most secure. If such a routine is disrupted,
naturally the emotional reaction can be criticism, even excessive criticism, if you will. Let's talk about the air signs. These are the moons in Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra. These are the moons that can intellectualize their feelings a lot and rationalize them to the point of detachment. Now, it provides great objectivity. In reality, these can be objectively emotional people. In a healthy manifestation, at a low level, they can be too detached from their emotions and able to talk about them without actually feeling them. In other words, these are the two sides of the coin for the air signs.
well, it's like with the moon in Gemini, and indeed the intellectualization there is very strong. The moon in Gemini is perhaps the most, how should I say, sanguine. Actually, Jung's theory of the four archetypes is based on the four elements, and for the air signs Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, this is the archetype of the sanguine. The person who really thinks about the emotions they experience, they intellectualize them very well, and also move through various emotions very quickly. That is,
in 10 minutes, I might get angry, and after 5 minutes, I might be laughing, meaning we can say that air signs are most strongly inclined towards this bipolarity. This thing exists, right? If a person is a Gemini or Aquarius, it doesn't necessarily mean they are bipolar. That's why it's very important in astrology. It's not good to, how to say,
what type of diagnosis, such a type, I would dose from it, meaning diagnosis can be made, but there need to be many factors. In no case can just one moon be a factor. There are many other additional things that can contribute to this. Well, in conclusion, the most important thing is to say pay attention to your moon, because most often this is your suppressed need. It is both an unconscious and conscious process. The need actually, the moon is extremely important as a factor in a natal chart, just like Mercury, Venus, Mars, and we will make such a type for them. Yes, but really there are many things that, how should I say, should not be generalized. There are architects precisely because of this. That was from us. If you have any interesting questions, write to us and we will try to answer them in future videos. And if you have ideas you want us to explore, feel free to write. You can subscribe to the Astrology Beyond channel. And that was from us, Kiril Goranov and Joan Ivanov. The Shield.